Alrighty, everybody. It is currently Tuesday, June 17th, 2025, and I'm coming at you live. And before we get into the complaining, which is what the beginning of every one of these episodes is, it's just me wildly bitching about shit that I don't even know. I'm just generally angry right now. But before we get into that, I wanted to think. I think I might have like an actual listener. I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe it maybe I'm just convincing myself I do, but hey, look, sometimes that's what you gotta do. Sometimes you have to live in a world of complete delusion, but I think there is someone rated the podcast, which hasn't happened since I did it on my other Spotify account, so, yeah, shout out to that person, whoever did that, that Indian bot. I don't know, I haven't got any messages from any, like, sex bots that are like, "Do you want to see my hole? Click on link." I haven't got any of that yet. So I don't know, maybe it's a real person, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a maybe it's the FBI. Maybe they realize they got their man. They're like, "Hey, we can trick this guy into doing a lot of shit." Maybe it's those guys, but I don't know. If it is a real person and you are listening to this, thank you, but you know, that's as much positivity as I can muster because I am pissed off right now, all right? For one, I haven't jacked off in 2 days, which I know for a lot of people that's chump change. For me, that's we're talking I've missed at least 10 jack off sessions. If it's been 2 days, I've missed at least 10. So I'm full of jizz, right? Completely full of jizz. But at the same time, my body's completely sore. So even if I wanted to whack off, right? Even if that was something I wanted to do, I wouldn't be able to do it because my entire body is like shaking from being sore. Because I had to hand sand a fence yesterday. I'm very fucking tired for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I was so dehydrated yesterday. I almost crashed my car. My car that doesn't have working brakes. You know? I don't know. Something about today is pissing me off, all right? And another thing we're gonna do today, and this is why I'm just getting this out of the way right now, all right? I'm a pissed off teacher. Me and my wife, we're probably gonna get divorced. My kids won't stop screaming, all right? We're trying to give them the iPad and they keep fucking screaming while me and my wife try to figure out who how the debt is gonna be broken up in our divorce. That's how I'm feeling today. And in today's episode, we're saying the word homo a lot. All right, we're talking Homo sapiens, we're talking Homo neanderthalis, we're talking Homo erectus. Hey, don't be laughing at that. All right, I've had enough. I've had enough with the laughing at the homo. All right, homo, stop it, dude. I'm just imagining. I'm just imagining how awful it must be to be like a middle to high school teacher, right? Because if you're like an elementary school teacher, you can at least, and I guess maybe like a middle school, high school teacher, you can still be like, but that guy's retarded, right? And I think it's maybe easier with younger kids to be like, "Eh, that's just like a retarded person. Like that's this is barely a human being that we're dealing with." But like some of these 14-year-olds, some of the guys I went to school with, they looked like they looked pretty fucking grown at like 14 years old, so it's like a grown ass man's body, but like a retarded like child's brain. And it's just that combination of the 2 must be, like, so infuriating to these because it looks like a kid that could be, like, like, out of college and, like, an intern at an accounting office or whatever, but no, it's like it's basically a retarded person. Alright, so no laughing at the homo, no making homo and if I hear a Homo erectus joke, you're going to the office, alright, because that's sexual assault. We got ladies in this classroom, alright? Be resp No, we don't. We have no one in this class. I'm a schizophrenic dude in an abandoned school yelling at a bunch of rats sitting in desks. But hey, so no homo jokes and especially no erectus jokes, all right? We got Kyle back there. Kyle's gay. He told me that in confidence last week. He told me he was molested by his priest and, that combined with his innate homosexuality has caused some very confusing thoughts. All right? He told me that in confidence. All right, because he's scared of you guys knowing that he's gay and that he was molested by a priest. All right, so don't be making any homo jokes around Kyle. All right, because today we're talking about the Stone Age, and the Stone Age ended around 5,000 to 2,000 BC and lasted 3.4 million years. So It's like 99% of human history. It's almost like 100%. It's basically 100% of like human and like the human ancestor history is the Stone Age. And that's the Stone Age is basically just using stone tools. And so you look at like some of these chimps and monkeys and stuff, they're technically in the Stone Age. I do feel like that's cheating a little bit though, and here's why. Because they saw us do that, right? Like the chimps, like humans are from Africa, right? And so the chimps saw us using the rock. And so it's kind of like, yeah, they're technically in the Stone Age, but like they're copying us a little bit, right? And same with like, they'll be like, the fucking, the Planet Earth documentaries. They've been doing a lot of those like about cities now, right? Like nature documentaries about animals and cities, and they'll be like, "Look at how smart this bird is. It dropped like a nut, like a walnut or whatever in front of this car, and the car cracked the walnut for it. That's so smart." And it's like, "Yeah, but like we made the car." So it's not that smart. The bird wouldn't be able to crack the nut if we never invented the car. So it's like, yeah, congrats to the bird a little bit, to have a little dumb bird brain and to be able to figure that out. You got to give them a little bit of credit, but I think more credit goes to human beings for inventing cars, in that scenario. But hey, I don't know. Maybe the chimps did come up with that, using the rocks and the sticks independently. I don't know though. I don't know if I buy it is all I'm saying. All right. And so it is considered entirely prehistoric because writing wasn't invented until 3200 BC. In the first writing systems that were kind of invented were in the Middle East. It was called cuneiform, and it was basically just like they used like a triangle thing, and they would like combine it in different ways and like orient it in different ways, and that was the first writing system that was ever invented. So they really didn't have writing. I don't know though. It's like because painting is kind of like writing in some ways, right? Like you're recording a thing that you saw. It's just not like as, you know, I don't know, like variable as writing, if that makes sense. Like if you're writing something down, you can combine different words and put them in different ways, but you can kind of do the same thing with a painting. I'm sure to like the ancient cavemen, that were like painting mammoths in like a bowl or whatever and like putting their hand on top of it. I'm sure that had like a different meaning to them than it does to us. Like to them, it wasn't just like a picture of a mammoth and shit. It was like, I don't know, some some story about how their grandpa, who lived to 30 years old, found water or something like that. So I don't know. That's maybe it was invented. Maybe writing was invented in I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, dude. I'm so tired right now. I feel like my brain has probably shrunken a fair bit, dude. And it was only like 90 degrees. It wasn't even that hot yesterday. To be fair, it was like 300% humidity. Like my sweat was not evaporating at all. Like that sweat was just pouring out of my body and like staying there. Like that's how fucking humid it was. I don't even know if I was sweating. It might have just been the moisture in the air clinging to my body. Like that's how fucking humid it was yesterday. I lost a lot of water, dude. I don't know how I survived the drive home. I don't know how the Mexicans do they just not sweat? I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a Mexican sweat before. They call them, the wetback is like I guess a slur for Mexican. That's not really a slur though. That's like Chinaman. It's like yeah, maybe technically it's used in a derogatory way, but it's not really a slur. Like I don't know where that slur comes. I've never seen them sweat before. I've never. They work all day. They work in like the most punishing conditions, maybe not known to man, but definitely in America. But that's not saying a lot. We are a bitch ass country like that, but still, these are pretty punishing conditions these dudes are working in. I've never seen one of them sweat ever. It's insane, and I really, to be fair, I do only see the Mexicans working in like rich neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Because that's where I go to work, and then out where I live, people aren't rich enough to be able to hire Mexicans and shit to do all their work for them. But still, I think I don't. I've just never seen them sweat before. Maybe out on the farms when they're picking watermelons for 3 cents a day, they're sweating, but I don't know. All right, and so the Stone Age ended when stone tools got phased out for copper in the old world, right? So we're talking mostly in this case, we're talking about Europe and Asia. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the Stone Age a little bit. Some of it's kind of, we're talking about North America a little bit here, but not really. And the thing about North America, we'll get to it in a little bit. They did know how to use like metalsmithing, right? Like they knew how to manipulate copper and silver and gold, but they never really used it for a whole ton of tools. I don't know. I guess they just thought rocks were sicker. It's one of those things like people talk about how like, oh, Native Americans were so dumb, they never invented the wheel, or they'll talk about like any civilization like that. And the funny thing is, Native Americans did invent the wheel, but they only used it for like toys and shit. I don't know, and they only used their metalsmithing to make like jewelry and stuff. They were just more about aesthetics, you know what I mean? They were just the original aura farmers, you might say. You know, they were like, yeah, you guys have copper and shit, but we're gonna beat your ass with rocks, you know? We're we're gonna use rocks and we're still gonna create these giant civilizations, right? Like those Aztec pyramids and like those Incan cities that were built on like the 20,000 feet in the air on top of a mountain. They did all that shit with rocks. That might have just been them aura farming. Like, yeah, we know we can use metal and it would be easier, but fucking rocks. I don't know. And so the New World did not have a copper or bronze age, but like I said, copper, gold, and silver smithing were around at the same time. Like, right when the old world was figuring out like they could, you know, melt copper and make tools with it and shit, the New World was doing the same thing. I guess they just never went full force with it. They were just like, nah, dude, I'm not. I'm not doing all that. They were kind of in Margaritaville. That might be, you know, how you want to look at it. They were like, no, dude, we can just chill by a campfire all day, tell these crazy stories, chill in the fucking teepee, you know, smoke the peace pipe. We're not doing all that, right? So so the Native Americans, you know, and the Amazonian tribes, maybe not the Aztecs and the Incas. If you know about their history, they were definitely not in Margaritaville, but it seemed like everyone else in the New World was in Margaritaville. They were like, "Yeah, dude, we know we can do that, but like it's harder. So we're just not we're not, dude. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's the Stone Age somewhere, is all I have to say about that one. And so the Stone Age encompasses the history of all Homo species and Australopithecus. And if you don't know, Australopithecus is like the genus that eventually led to the Homo species. And the Homo species is like humans, Neanderthals, Denisovans or whatever they're called, and like a few other species that, you know, obviously humans dominated. Obviously, we're number one. We killed off all the Neanderthals, killed off all those other guys, and we figured it out before we did, or before they did. And so there are three periods in the Stone Age: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic. And lithic means rock, and then paleo means old, meso means middle, and then neo means new. So the Paleolithic contains the majority of human history and lasted from 3.3 million years ago to 11.7 thousand years ago. And so we're talking, yeah, basically 3.3 million years of, you know, the history of human beings and their evolution. They were just messing with rocks and stuff. You know, rocks, the occasional bone, the occasional wooden stick, but it was mostly rocks. They were focused on rocks for a little bit there. I don't know. Old humans, you know, the ancient human beings, the Australopithecus, they might have just been autistic, right? Like they might have all just been like autistic dudes who love collect. This is a this is a geodesic stone from Italy. That's just what they must have been doing. I don't know. They just loved rocks. And there is a few theories. I didn't write any of this down. This is just stuff that I know about how they figured out how copper melts and stuff. And one of the theories they have is that they would use like clay to make like glaze for the pots, right? And the glaze is the thing that like protects the pot and like makes it waterproof and more resistant to the elements. And they figured out somehow in there and making that glaze, right? Like the glaze was made out of a copper ore basically, and then from there they figured out how to get copper out of that. And then they went bonkers, dude. They went crazy on it. And so and by the way, the Mesolithic is a very short period and was kind of just a transition period from one thing to the next, right? Like they did figure out a fair bit of shit, right? In the thing I was reading, it was like, yeah, it was just a transitionary period, but they figured out a lot of shit as we're going to talk about during the Mesolithic. And the Neolithic was the kind of the end of hunter gatherers, and in some places it overlaps with the Copper Age, right? It's not like one dude figured out copper and then everyone else went hog wild and they were like copper, copper, copper. It was kind of like, you know, and especially with how hard it was, they were just doing this shit on basically They were they were basically doing metal smithing on campfires. And so they kind of overlap a little bit. Like, yeah, you might have one copper tool, but then everything else is going to be made out of stone, is kind of how you can think about it. So around 4 million years ago, a single savanna-like biome stretched from southern Africa to modern-day China. And that's, if you don't know, that's kind of where humans evolved, or that's where they evolved to like walk upright and shit. It was in the savannah. And then there's the aquatic ape theory, which we might talk about at the end, but that's, people think it's some bullshit. I don't know. It could be true, and I do like I do like the idea of an aquatic ape. You know, mermaids and shit. Maybe it's just because I think mermaids are super hot. Maybe that's why I like the aquatic ape theory. But the consensus scientific theory is that humans evolved walking upright in savannas and shit, and that's why this is important, because it's basically just a highway that is really well suited for humans to travel on from southern Africa all the way up to China and shit, right? And it just kind of explains how humans got to where they got. And this biome facilitated migration and diversification of the Homo genus. And so I don't really know how this works. I think Australopithecus, or maybe Homo erectus, one of the two, that guy figured out how to walk on 2 feet. He was like, guys, I know you guys are banging on rocks and shit. That's very cool. We're probably going to do that for another 3 million years. But I figured out how to walk on 2 feet. And so, like, the Homo erectus, probably, I don't know what fucking species it was, went out on like this giant savanna biome and diversified into Neanderthals and Denisovans and all these other human species, whereas humans kind of stayed in Africa, and that's where we evolved. And then we came out and dominated everyone else, right? And so the oldest evidence of stone tools dates to 3.4 million years ago, but the oldest discovered tools date to 3.3 million years ago. And so there's like evidence of monkeys, basically, chimps, basically, using stone tools, right? The evidence is that there's these scratch marks on these bones that they found that look like stone tool scratch marks, but they didn't have the actual tool that they used to do those scratch marks, if that makes sense. And so they found the oldest tool, and it's 3.3 million years old. And so, yeah, I don't know. And some of these are like, is that a tool, dude, or is that just like a rock? Like I don't know. Maybe it's a tool, but it kind of just seems like one dude found a particularly sharp rock and decided to start using it. But maybe that's what a tool is. I maybe should have looked that up a little bit. But anyway, the Paleolithic. This is what we're going to talk about. It's the first one in the fucking Stone Age. And so the lower Paleolithic, and all of these are kind of divided into like their own little sections, right? It's like the lower Paleolithic, the middle, and then the upper, and then I think the Neolithic has their own thing going on. The Mesolithic, they shit on that one, dude. And I don't know, I think I'm a Mesolithic fan. Like, they figured out so much shit in the Mesolithic, as we're going to talk about. And so it lasted from 2.5 million years ago to 200,000 years ago, and that's just the lower Paleolithic. And so that's the majority of human history right there. And the first stone tools of this period were simple sharpened pebbles used for cutting and smashing. And yeah, those are the two most basic ones. I have to imagine that the first thing, I think Stanley Kubrick figured it out when he made 2001: A Space Odyssey. I do think they were just using rocks to like smash animals over the head and shit. And they also used these rocks to get to the bone marrow because they didn't have super strong teeth like hyenas or lions or whatever. And so they had to use rocks to get to the bone marrow. And bone marrow is like a very, very good source of calories. It's basically just like butter. That's what's in there in the middle of the bones and shit. And so they figured out rocks and they were like, fuck, dude, this is like an unlimited calorie source that we got going on. So if I had to guess, I would say smashing came before cutting. And the cutting was just to like get all the meat off the bone, basically. And so the first hand axe was invented 700,000 years ago and was just like a giant version of one of these little pebble tools that they had. They still used it for smashing and cutting. They also used it for digging, I guess, to get to like roots and grubs and stuff, just to get to all like that shitty that shitty stuff that lives underground. And what a hand axe is, it's basically just like a giant arrowhead. If you had to imagine it, it's just like this big giant rock with a sharp point and a thing at the top that you can grab. And so they call that a hand axe. And so from this technology came the advent of flake tools, which are byproducts of the creation of much larger flint tools. And so basically what they were doing, right? Like I was saying, a hand axe is just a big giant sharpened thing, right? It comes to a point at the end, and then there's a handle at the top. And so to get that hand axe, you have to like hit the giant flint stone with like antlers and bones and other rocks and shit. And when you're doing that, like these flakes come off, and these flakes are super duper sharp, right? And these were kind of like the original knives, if you want to think about it like that. That they would use that to like skin the animal and to get some more precise cuts going on. And so the middle Paleolithic lasted from 300,000 years ago to 50,000 years ago, and is known as the time in which Neanderthals thrived. Neanderthals, it's like Neanderthals are kind of like that kid that was like 5'5" and like 200 pounds in sixth grade or whatever. Just like they were absolute monsters back then, but they never really hit the growth spurt after that, if that makes sense. Like they were really good at that time period, and it does make sense that they were good then because intelligence and like big social groups were a little less important, and just being strong as shit was a little more important. And so that's why Neanderthals kind of thrived in this point. And Neanderthals lived entirely in Europe and the Near East. And the Near East is, you might think of like the Middle East when you hear that. That's not what it is. So, Near East is the Levant, which is like Lebanon, Syria, Israel, Palestine, and maybe like parts of Iraq and shit, and then Turkey. That's the Near East. And so they lived basically Europe and around the Mediterranean, if you want to get like a picture of it in your head. And so during this time, Neanderthals practice rituals such as burials and art, whereas humans did not. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like you can't be doing art, 300,000 years ago. If you're doing that, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose out on it, right? You got to be focused on how you can make the biggest, sharpest rock possible, which is what the humans were focused on. And I think that's why we won. We were like, yeah, that guy's dead. Just leave him there. And the Neanderthals were a bunch of like liberal bitch ass pussies, and they were like, no, no, we have to bury him and make art about it. And the humans were like, shut the fuck, stop being a pussy, dude. Humans were basically just like beast conservatives. And the Neanderthals were like pronoun fucking green hair lips. And so that's why we beat them out. We were just savages and we killed them all. And it is also during this time when humans expanded across all of Asia and Australia. And they don't really know when they got to Australia. Like the range of when people got to Australia, because people in Australia, they didn't have like the same myths as like North America, where you can like kind of figure out how the migration patterns worked and stuff. The Aboriginals, which we kind of have talked about before, they weren't focused on that. They were like, dude, history's gay. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the universe. They were basically just a bunch of Neil deGrasse Tysons in Australia. Like that's what the average that's what the Aboriginals were doing. And so they didn't have the same history and stuff, or the same like even like a lot of the myths, the Native American myths, you can kind of find, truths about history within there, not with the Aboriginal myths. They weren't focused on that shit. And so the range in which they think people got to Australia, it was like they're like it was either 40,000 years ago or 125,000 years ago. And it's like that's a could we narrow it down a little bit more? That's like 80,000 years. And so yeah, during this time, the Neanderthals were dominating, but the humans were in the shadows, in the weeds, slowly expanding across Asia into Australia and stuff. They were like, "Oh yeah, you guys got turkey? That's what you got? You guys are making kebabs and shit. We're going to Australia. I'm going to the land down under." Ding 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 ding. I come from a land down under. And so that's what the humans were doing while the Neanderthals were busy, burying people and making art and shit. And now we're on to the Upper Paleolithic era. And this lasted from about 50,000 years ago to about 10,000 years ago and ended when the Ice Age did. And the Ice Age, I'm trying to remember the dates of it. I think it was 100,000 years ago, maybe like 125,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago is when the Ice Age was going on. And so when we were talking about that savanna biome and stuff, you're probably imagining a bunch of mammoths walking around and stuff. No, it was pretty chill. It was probably pretty warm outside, nice tropical environment going on. It was Margaritaville. Australopithecus, he was chilling in Margaritaville, and then the Ice Age came along and fucked it all up. And so this era, sorry, which is the Upper Paleolithic, saw a rapid succession of complex stone technologies as well as art and ornamentation, right? And this is where the humans start to dominate. The Neanderthals, they were focused on the art and the burials and the rituals and stuff a little bit too early. If they just started it a little bit later, we might be all speaking Neanderthalese right now. You know what? You know what I mean? Right? It's like if Hitler never tried to invade Russia in the winter, we might all be speaking German right now. Probably not. An empire run by a schizophrenic guy probably wouldn't have won that war, but who knows? And so same thing goes for the Neanderthals. If they just started art a little bit later, like around the time we did, they we might be all, might be my name might be Ugg instead of my actual name, right? My name might be Ugg Grugadug instead of, my real name. We might be speaking a completely different language. And so most of the growth of technology and art was attributed to humans as opposed to Neanderthals. And the Neanderthals, this is just the fall off of the Neanderthal. You hate to see it. You don't want to see the guys go out like this, but hey, you guys fucked it up. You kind of have to blame the Neanderthals for this one. You were focused on all the bullshit way too early. You were making necklaces and stuff. You guys were doing like first grade art projects, making a macaroni necklace, whereas humans, we were like, how can we make this rock a little bit sharper? That's what we were focused on. We were focused on military development. And so, yeah, we just started dominating at this point. And I think the Neanderthals, I think when they say they went extinct was around 30,000 years ago. So, yeah, they really didn't have it going on like that. And so, due to the rapid migration of humans to the Americas and Australia, stone technology diversified greatly, as did culture. And so it's like, yeah, we're in North America now. We don't have like lions and fucking, whatever the fuck they have in Africa and Europe and shit like that. Like we got some new stuff going on here. We got to make a different type of sharp rock. You know what I mean? This hand axe, it ain't gonna work here. All right, welcome to the big leagues, boys. The lights are bright out here. This is we got to make a different type of sharp rock than those assholes over there in fucking Asia and stuff, right? And so obviously the culture diversified because they started seeing new animals and new types of plants and stuff. So that's the end of the Paleolithic, and now we're on to the Mesolithic, which I think is the most underrated of all of these. Everyone talks about the Paleolithic, cavemans, Uggs and Grugs going around and shit, but the Mesolithic is really, really when humans started getting things going on. It's like, yeah, we got to the Americas and stuff during the Paleolithic, but we weren't really doing a whole lot. The Mesolithic, they did a whole lot. And the Mesolithic lasted from 10,000 years ago to 4,000 years ago, and it's like by far the shortest of all of these, and was characterized by rising sea levels. That's very important. Like I said, the ice age ended, all the ice started melting, and the sea level started rising. And so by this time, humans were the only member of the Homo genus left. We were the only ones. Everyone else, they got. They tried to make that art. They tried to do whatever the fuck they were doing, and we figured it out, whereas they didn't. And so the technologies developed at this time reflect the need to find food in new environments. And I'm not just talking about, they got to North America as opposed to Asia. The rising sea levels like completely changed everything. Like all these lakes started forming in like, Minnesota, for example. And the rising sea levels, obviously that had an effect. You couldn't go as, far out to find clams and fucking barnacles and whatever the fuck they were munching on. So they had to come up with new stone tools. They were like, how can I kill a mammoth, dude? I can't go out into the ocean anymore. I can't go, munch on oysters and clams and shit. I gotta kill a mammoth now. And so that's where a lot of this stone technology was developed. It was like, fuck, dude, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? You know, it's not cold as shit anymore. It was warm as shit for a while, and then it was cold as shit for a while, and now it's just kind of like in the middle. It's in the middle. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to adapt? I make a new special type of sharp rock. That's what you do. And that's a good life lesson right there. We can learn a lot from our ancient ancestors. If you're in a predicament right now, if you didn't get into the college you wanted to get into, you got to adapt and make a nice sharp rock. Okay? That's an important life lesson there. Make a sharp rock. And so this term is really only used in reference to Europe and Asia. And composite tools, which are tools made from more than one material, began to arise. And so it's like before they were just fucking with the sharp rocks, they were like, dude, we figured it all out. We got it. There's nothing better than a nice sharp rock. What else do I need, dude? Oh, I need a shovel. Dude, I already have a sharp rock that can dig a hole. What the fuck do I need a shovel for? And then one dude was like, dude, I put a stick and a sharp rock together and now I can dig a hole quick as hell. And everyone was like, fuck, he's got a fair point. We all got to start doing that. We all got to start putting the sharp rocks and the sticks together, or it would be like a bone and a sharp rock, but it was still sharp rock based. Everything was based around how sharp you could get that rock going. And so it is believed that this need for like a wider range of materials led to increased social behavior, and this made more like complex settlements, right? And so it's like I need a stick, but I need a very certain type of stick, because if I use it around the sticks of, if I use like one of the sticks we got around here to make this shovel, it's not going to work. And so I got to go talk to this other guy and try to get a stick from him, right? And that's where like the, more social interaction came from. And then you got to kind of make a complex settlement, right? Because it's like, fuck, I need to grow sticks here, and then I need a place where I can get the sharp rocks from, and then I need a place where I can, do a fire so that I can, make the stick hard and then put the fucking sharp rock on it. It it's all based around sharp rocks, dude. It's really, really is incredible how much of human history and culture and all that shit was based around sharp rocks. And these new tools also caused a sharp increase in hunting and fishing. And so I guess before that it was mostly like a, occasionally you'd get like a nice rabbit, you know what I mean, or a boar or some shit like that, but most of the time you're going to be eating fruit and stuff. But then they made, these super special sharp sticks with, or sharp rocks with sticks attached to them, and now I can fucking eat mammoth meat all the time, dude. And I'm not talking about a BBC, dude. I'm not talking about Mandingo. I'm talking about actual meat from a mammoth. And so it is believed that this period was also when dogs were first domesticated. And so we're eating a ton of meat. We're chilling with dogs and stuff. I think the Mesolithic might be the best of all of these, We're not eating berries and mushrooms all the time. Now we're eating meat. Now we're chilling with dogs all the time, you know what I mean? I'm chilling back in, my caveman recliner that's made out of rocks and leopard skins and stuff, and I got my pooch by my side while I'm munching down on a fucking mammoth rib. It sounds like a great time to me. I don't know. It might be my favorite of all of these. And so this time also saw the first societal battle on the border of Egypt and Sudan. And so this is like, obviously murder has always existed, same with like rape and all this stuff, but it's like it was a family ordeal, you know what I mean? It's like a Mexican restaurant, it's family run. That's how like these, the battles and the murder and stuff was going on. But then they were like, fuck, dude, that guy's got the good sticks over there. We got to go kill him. And so I think it's all about sticks really at this point. We were focused on sharp rocks for about 3 million years there, but then we figured out sticks, dude, and we were like we were like, these things really rule. I don't know who came up with a stick, but fucking shout out to that guy, because this is very cool. I'm gonna have to go kill a few people to get this stick going on, but I think it's going to be worth it. I think it's a worthwhile investment to go attack this other town because they got the good sticks. And the funny thing is, so this is like right on the border of Egypt and Sudan. And Egypt and Sudan have like, they've always been fighting. They've always been beefing a little bit, really, especially during like the Arab conquest, right? I'm sure like Egypt was Arabized before Sudan was. And so Egypt and Sudan were beefing for a little bit there. So I guess they've always been beefing. And now we're on to the Neolithic. And the Neolithic ended about 2,000 years ago. So we're talking about 6,000 years ago to 2,000 years ago, and was characterized by agriculture. And it's just tough, dude. We went from dogs and eating mammoth tails and stuff, and now we're, making bread. And it's like, I get it, bread rules. I've never been a big carb guy. I know a lot of people love pasta, especially. I'm like, I prefer the meatballs, you know what I mean? When I'm eating pasta, I'm not like, hyped about getting carbs or whatever. I'm hyped about this meatball, the spicy Italian meatball. It's what I prefer when we're talking about pasta here. And so I think that's why the Neolithics is probably my least favorite of all of these. And as we went from sharp rocks, and now we're talking about smooth rocks. We're talking about polished stone tools at this point. And so during this era, the Fertile Crescent saw rapid settlement. And the Fertile Crescent, that's where like Mesopotamia and shit was going on. That's where we were talking about the first writing system ever invented, cuneiform. That's where that was invented. And so rice cultivation began in East Asia, in corn in Mesoamerica. And then I guess the Fertile Crescent, they probably had a mixture of rice and wheat. And I'm sure Europe was also growing wheat at the time. And so, yeah, we got the big three at this point: corn, rice, and wheat. And those are still the big three. I feel like corn is overtaking the other two at this point. Like, everything is made out of corn, dude. You go to like the junk food aisle of any, grocery store, it's 90% corn. Like, it's either fried in corn oil. It either, has corn syrup on it, or it's like a tortilla chip that's made out of corn. And so I feel like corn, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of overtaking rice at this point, which I don't know. There's like 17 billion people in India and China. So maybe corn isn't overtaking rice, but I feel like it's a tighter battle than people would give it credit for. And I feel like wheat has kind of fallen to the wayside. We got pasta and bread and stuff like that, but I think everywhere else, wheat isn't, or wheat isn't, the thing it was, back in the day. Like Mesopotamia, it was like the first place where civilization really developed, right? Like complex civilization. And you know, wheat's kind of fallen off, It's almost like the Neanderthal of grains, if you want to think about it like that. Like it had a very good run early on, but now it's like, I don't know, dude, corn and rice are just better. It's just better, right? It's like, why would I make bread out of wheat? Why would I do all that work when I can just boil rice? Or I can just, do whatever the fuck with corn. I don't know what they're doing. They're doing everything with corn. Everything is made out of corn nowadays. And so, also at this point in the Neolithic, larger city like settlements appeared in Turkey, and polished stone tools began to arise wherever agriculture was present. And so, kind of in North America, like when I talk about Mesoamerica, where corn was starting to get domesticated, that's like Mexico, basically just Mexico, right? I was going to say like Honduras and Nicaragua, but that's not really where corn was domesticated that much. And so, up there, they didn't have polished stone tools as much during this time because they were still hunting. They were still like, fuck no, we're not, dude, bread. I'm not going to start eating bread. I'm not going to start eating corn on the cob, dude. I'm going to go out. I'm going to kill a deer. I'm going to wear its antlers on my head, and I'm going to jump around a fire while I eat the deer. you know? So that's why the Native Americans were kind of maybe the sickest at this point. Like, I get it. You have cities in fucking Turkey, right? Like, if you've ever heard about that buried city in Turkey, and it was like, it's not one of those things where it was like first it was above ground and then it got buried. I think it was always like a buried city. I think it's Göbekli Tepe or some shit like some completely made up name. But anyway, large religious structures such as Stonehenge popped up like basically all over the world, even in like North America and stuff. Like they were building shit like Stonehenge. I think North America they maybe didn't have as much stone shit. It was more just like giant hills. They were just making hills and stuff. But they started making religious structures, churches and stuff. And especially in Europe in the Near/Middle East. And so while some groups remained egalitarian, right, like everyone was pretty much equal, hierarchical societal structures began appearing. Yeah, so that's the beginning of the end of the Stone Age. It's like, yeah, we got polished tools. If you guys got copper going on, but everyone's eating bread, everyone is eating corn on the cob. It's not as sick as it used to be. And that's the end of the Stone Age. We're only at 37 minutes. Can I talk for another 23 minutes? Do I have the brain capacity available for that? I think it's going to be an adventure. I think it's going to be a fun adventure. And I wanted to talk, first of all, about like all the riots and protests and like the assassinations that are going on in America. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, right? Because I feel like a lot of people look at that and they're just like, what's wrong with these people? What's wrong with these idiots? And you have to think about it. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong about how I think about it, but I was thinking about it yesterday when I was mowing the lawn, doing some work for my grandpa, staining the fence, moving rocks around. I was I was thinking about society because I'm just like really introspective like that. I was Bruce Springsteen out. I was being a hardworking man that I also was thinking. I went full Springsteen yesterday, but I was thinking about like if you look at a lot of the Enlightenment thinkers, I'm trying to think of who it was. It was some British dude. He came up with the idea of a social contract, right? And he was like, society kind of agrees, even if it's not written on paper, to like terms and stuff, right? It's like, it's a contract. It's I'm gonna follow the law, and in return, I get safety and I get the ability for the pursuit of happiness or whatever the fuck the Constitution says. I don't really know. I'm an American, but that's what being an American's all about. It's all about quoting the Constitution and talking about how all our constitutional rights are being taken away, but never having read the Constitution. But anyway, anyway, it's the social contract, and that's the idea I kind of wanted to talk about first. And everyone it was like, oh, they're killing people, they're assassinating people, they're rioting. Law and order is being destroyed, right? And law and order is kind of just one part of the social contract. And I want to talk about like the law part of that social contract. And, you know, it's this thing of like, in order for the law to be upheld by the citizens, they have to get something in return, right? It's like, why would I uphold the law when I can't, when there's nothing in it for me in return, right? Like, why would I do all that? Why would I work for free, basically, right? Like, why would I, stay on the straight and narrow and not commit crimes to get money and, have fun and shit when I get nothing in return? And that's kind of what's going on right now. It's like, it's like all these riots in LA, right? People are shitting on that, but it's like, why would they not do that? Like, what is the incentive to not do a riot in LA? It's like LA is already, it's already a hellscape. There's unchecked homelessness, there's mass illegal immigration, there's no jobs, no one can afford a house. So it's like, why, if the government is not upholding their side, why if other parts of society, these corporations are not upholding their part of the social contract, why would I uphold my part, right? Like, why would I follow the law and listen to the law? I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying that this is, the rationale behind it. Like, why would I listen to what the government has to say when the government hasn't done anything for me ever, right? Like why the government, like the supposedly all-knowing power that has everything right all the time, why would I listen to those guys? This the people that fought for our country are literally rotting to death in the street because they can't get health care. I can't afford a house, right? I have to live with my parents despite the fact that I got a college education, which everyone told me to do. What if I can't get anything out of it, why would I follow the law? Is basically what I'm saying here. It's I don't know. Like I said, I'm completely brain dead right now, but that was my idea. It's people aren't listening to the law. People aren't upholding their part of the social contract because no other part of the social contract is being upheld. Right? It's I can't get a house, I can't get a job, I can't, have kids, I can't have a family. And that's a big part of it, right? I can't afford to have a family. So it's like people are like, "Oh, you need to set a good example for the kids." What kids are you talking about? No one no one can afford to have kids anymore. Why the fuck are you talking about? So why would it be important for me to uphold the law from the what future generation? No one can afford to have kids anymore. The only people having kids are incredibly poor people who are fucking over their children for life. And it's like, oh, what? If I break the law, I'm going to go to jail? No, I'm not. The jails are full of 14-year-old black kids whose fathers have been incentivized to abandon them. It's You're not going to put me in jail. Oh, you're going to put me in jail. Meanwhile, 1,000 people are killed every weekend in Chicago. That's not going to happen. No one's going to go to jail for these protests. No one's going to get locked up for 30 years for destroying a cop car because the jail's already full of murderers and stuff because the government incentivized their parents to basically abandon them and treat them like shit. And that's what I'm talking about here specifically is the single mothership, especially in black communities is very high. And one of the reasons for that is because if you're a single mother, then you can get more money from the government, right? If you're the only parent in the household, then you get more money from the government because the government's like, oh, well, that guy's, there's no father here, so now we need to give this guy more money. And so the fucking mother's obviously like, well, this guy's kind of a deadbeat piece of shit anyway. Why don't I cut him off completely and have him not around my children at all and get more money from it? So I think that's what's going on here right now. It's not, some sort of mass hysteria. It's not right. It's not like it's the religious people be like the end times are coming. The Christians, the Seventh Day Adventists, especially, they'll be like the apocalypse is coming. That's what all this is. Everyone's going crazy because there's some sort of subconscious force taking grasp of everyone and making them go crazy. When in reality, it's just no other part of the social contract is being upheld. So then, therefore, people aren't going to uphold their part of it. And so I think that's the very simple explanation for it. I don't think, maybe they're not right. Maybe it's not right to burn a city to the ground and, kill lawmakers in Minnesota, but it's what people are going to do. There's no incentive not to. Is basically it's basically all it boils down to. It's what's the incentive not to? It's like whether I riot in LA, whether I completely destroy this city, it's like what? I'm not gonna be able to buy a house now. I wasn't gonna be able to buy a house in the first place. Oh, what? I'm gonna go to jail and I'm not gonna be able to have kids. I wasn't gonna be able to have kids in the first place, right? There's no incentive. There's no hope, really, right? And that's the incentive that's been lost is hope. There's no hope for a lot of these people. They don't there's no indication that anything is going to get better. There's no indication that they'll be able to, settle down in the suburbs and have a family of four. It's so they're just like, fuck it. I'm just gonna do. I'm just gonna do whatever I want to do, and it's not. It's everybody. It's college educated. It spans across basically every single class of humans or people in America, other than the very, very, very rich people. Those are the only ones. Those are the only people. Like a house is $400,000 to be able to send your kids to college. That's another, several $100,000. To be able to afford the hospital bill to have children is like $30,000. So obviously people look at that and they're like, well, I'm never going to have kids. There's not going to be a substantial future generation here. And it's also not my future generation. That's the other thing about it. It's like, yeah, I'm not having kids. No one I know is having kids. I don't see any future generation being created here. And so I'm just going to do whatever I want because what the future generation is going to be fucked up. It's all these rich people having all these kids and stuff. It's I'm not going to be around them. What does it matter what I do? And so that's why I think everything's going on here. It really boils down to just people not being able to do what humans are kind of, you know, inarguably, right? Whatever belief system you have, whether you're an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim or whatever it is, the the base human desire, right? Like the whole reason that society exists, right? Like these stable societies with laws and regulations and stuff, is so people can have their kids and raise them well, right? Like that's why society exists. If there was no kids being born, right? If there's no children being born, then it's like why does society need to exist? I don't care that much. I'm a grown adult. I can fend for myself. I I can go out and get my food and do whatever the fuck I need to do. And I can do it illegally because it doesn't matter if society doesn't continue to exist because there's there's no there's no future generation for it to exist for. So I think that's why it's all going on. It's also just guys having fun. You know what I mean? It's especially and people will be like, "Oh, coronavirus was 4 years ago. That's when that whole thing ended. Why are you still freaking out about it?" And it's like, "Yeah, but it was people were pent up for an entire year. You basically pent up everyone for an entire year, and so now they're gonna go hog wild. Just think about it like I'm trying to think of an example, right? It's like when you leave your dog in a kennel, right? It's like the when my brother brings his kids over, we put the dog in the kennel, right? Because the dog's not good with kids. And then when we let the dog out of the kennel, he's running around the house, trying to go outside to play fetch and shit. It's because he's been pent up and he wasn't able to let that energy out for so long, and now he's going hog wild. He's like, dude, throw the tennis ball for me. What are we doing inside the house? He's running around, barking at the door and shit. Throw the tennis ball for me, dude. That's what I want right now. That's You need to throw the tennis ball for me, dude. And that's basically what's going on here. You know, it was I was pent up for an entire year. I didn't have a job. I wasn't able to go out with my friends and talk to them and vent to them, and be able to get all this stress out of myself. So now I'm gonna go crazy. I'm gonna go hog wild and I'm gonna have a fun old time. I'm gonna have a grand old time looting a Nordstrom. And that's the other thing is that this is all very fun. It's very, very fun to throw a mortar, throw a bunch of fireworks at a cop car. I would enjoy that. I can guarantee you I've never done it, but I can guarantee you I would enjoy it. I can 100% for a fact tell you that would probably be the most fun thing I did all year is throwing a firework at a cop car. It sounds like so much fun. And normally the incentive against that would be, well, you're going to go to jail now. And it's like, well, no, I'm not, right? No, I'm not. Because the jail is full of, decomposing fentanyl addicts and murderers. So no, you're not going to put me in jail because the jail's already full of people who did worse things than me. Especially in California. Like California, all its jails are completely overpopulated. So it's like, yeah, I know I'm not going to go there. I know you're not going to do it, and you're not going to get me either. That's the other thing. I have a mob surrounding me. I have 1,000 people surrounding me. Yeah, you can pull out a gun and kill a few of us, but then you're gonna get overrun by like a horde of fucking Walking Dead zombies and get torn apart, get your fucking guts eaten. So yeah, I'm not gonna go to jail for doing what I'm gonna do. It's what I'm gonna and then the other thing about it will be like, well, it's going to affect you as a person to do that. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to have kids, right? I'm never going to be able to have kids. So what does it matter if it affects me as a person? I'm not going to be able to raise a child now. Well, I was never going to have one in the first place. So that's what I think it all boils down to. It's just people, there's no future in sight. And so people are like, well, why don't I just have fun now? right? It's the same reason why historically, like, poor people commit the most crime. It's like, well, I'm poor, right? I was born poor. My entire family's poor. It's my family's been poor for generations and generations and generations. So why don't I commit crimes to get money? And it's like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? I'm gonna get out of jail, or I'm gonna go to jail and then I'm gonna get out and I'm still gonna be poor. Okay. Like what's the big deal then? Now, it's I'm still poor. I'm still my entire family is still poor. My entire lineage is still poor. It's what, I went to jail for 2 years? Okay, I gotta hang out in a place where all my meals were made for me and chill with my friends and not have to work. There's no incentive, right? There's no incentive not to go to jail if you're a very, very, entrenched poor person, right? If your family's been poor for generations and you're basically stuck there, it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go commit all these crimes so that I can make a bunch of money quickly. And what's the worst that's gonna happen? I'm still gonna be poor. It's the worst that's I already live in a shitty situation. It's not gonna get any shittier, is kind of the idea. And that's why, all these riots are going on. That's why people are burning their cities to the ground. It's like, what? I burned the city to the ground, and then what? The city's still filled with crime like it was before. The city's still filled with homeless people like before. The city's still filled with abandoned buildings like it was before. It's What difference does it make? What difference does it make whether I do it or not? There's no incentive there. And so I feel like that's why everything's going on. I figured it out, guys. I figured it out. Fox News, you can stop talking about it. Newsmax, Candace Owens. As much as I hate to shit on Candace Owens here, you can shut your mouth because because I figured it out. I don't know. I don't listen to Candace Owens that much. I just listened to that one she did with Tim Dillon, and I thought it was pretty. I thought it was pretty hilarious. But I think that's why everything's going, especially now with Iran, right? Like everyone, even though Trump said that he's not going to get involved in Iran, everyone's like, but we're still going to get involved with it in Iran, right? It's something about America. We just can't resist a war in the Middle East. We just cannot resist it, dude. We love war in the Middle East. Something about it. I don't know. Maybe it's because Arizona is like the ultimate American state. A lot of people think it's Texas or California or Florida. I think Arizona is the ultimate American state. It's the epitome. It's the epitome of everything American. It's completely uninhabitable. There's no reason people should be living in Arizona, but they do, right? And the people that live in Arizona bitch about it constantly, despite the fact that it was their decision to move there or their decision to continue to live there. They bitch about it constantly. We're destroying the environment completely there. There's nothing natural left in Arizona, right? There's no natural reason why humans should exist there. And I think that's why we fight wars in the Middle East. There's no reason to do it. There's no, what, Iran's going to come over here and do? No, they're not. Iran's not going to do anything to America. Iran's never done anything to America. Actually, it's the opposite. America destroyed Iran when we overthrew their Persian government, and we installed basically an Arabized government. We installed a Muslim government, right? So it's Iran's not going to do anything to America, and we're still going to get involved over there. I don't even know if they have oil. I'm sure Iran has a fair amount of oil. I'm sure they have a decent amount, but I don't know. This might just be a love of the game. It might just be a love of the game reason why America goes over to Iran. It might not even have anything to do with Israel. It's just like, dude, think about the prime years of America. The 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. What was going on then? War in the Middle East, American involvement in the Middle East. That might be the reason that they do it. That might be a Trump type of plan. America, think about the early 2000s, folks. I was building so many buildings, many casinos, and America was fighting in Iraq. So we're going to go to Iran so we can build more casinos and more hotels. Might be a Trump harebrained scheme there, dude. Might be a good plan. Might be a solid one we got going on. And that's the other thing about Trump. Trump truly is an American. Whether you love him or you hate him, Trump is the epitome of America, right? Just complete wild speculation at all times. You know, self self love, a braggadocious nature that's hiding a very thin layer, or is a very thin layer that's hiding complete self-hate, but not enough intelligence to acknowledge the self-hate and work your way out of it. Trump is a very, very American president. I don't know, that's all I've got for this episode. I'm trying to think, what else is going on, what else is going on in my life, what else is going on in the world. I'm very tired. I'm very very, very tired. Tired of the bullshit, tired physically, tired mentally. My feet hurt. Dude, my feet hurt so much. My lower back hurts so much. And that's why you don't ever want to do manual labor. Like, I hear a lot of these people, especially in high school, right? A lot of people will be like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm just going to, I'm just going to graduate and I'm going to go do construction. And it's like, that's how I know you've never done manual labor before, right? Because if you've ever done manual labor before, you'd be like, no, construction is the last thing I want to do. It's the very bottom on the list. There's nothing I want to do less than construction. I don't know. That's all I've got today, guys. Um, yeah, shout out to the new listener. Potentially, I don't know. Comment if you want to or don't. Makes no difference to me. You're probably not listening at this point, but hey, we ball, man. We ball. I hope you have a good day, good week, good year. I don't know, dude. I might take a nap today and record a second episode, not like a full episode. I don't know. If anything interesting happens today, I'll probably record another episode. I don't know. I'm very tired though. But I hope you have a good day, good week, good year, good life. Hope summer goes well for you. Hope you don't get too hot, too dehydrated or anything like that. Yeah. I just hope it's generally, a positive experience. Hope you don't die in Iran. You probably will. You probably will die in Iran. Or you'll get diabetes and you won't be able to afford healthcare and then you'll die here. But it'll probably be pretty fun when it happens. That's the one thing you got to do. You got to have fun. Goodbye.